Everything the light touches is our kingdom. Isaiah 32. Behold, a king shall reign in righteousness, and princes shall rule in judgment. And a man shall be as an hiding place from the wind, and a covert from the tempest, as rivers of water in a dry place, as the shadow of a great rock in a weary land. And a man shall be as an hiding place from the wind, and a covert from the tempest, as rivers of water in a dry place, as the shadow of a great rock in a weary land. And a man and a covert from the tempest, as rivers of water in a dry place, as the shadow of a great rock in a weary land.
Welcome to the kingdom.
Revelation 14. And I looked, and lo, a Lamb stood on the Mount Zion, and with him 144,000, having his Father's name written in their foreheads. And I heard a voice from heaven, as the voice of many waters, and as the voice of a great thunder. And I heard the voice of harpers harping with their harps. And they sung, as it were, a new song before the throne, and before the 4 beasts and the elders. And no man could learn that song but the 144,000, which were redeemed from the earth. These are they which were not defiled with women, for they are virgins. These are they which follow the Lamb whithersoever he goeth. These were redeemed from among men, being the first fruits unto God and to the Lamb. And in their mouth was found no guile, for they are without fault before the throne of God. Then I saw another angel fly in the midst of heaven, having the everlasting gospel to preach unto them that dwell on the earth, and to every nation and kindred and tongue and people, saying with a loud voice, Fear God, and give glory to him, for the hour of his judgment is come, and worship him that made heaven and earth and the sea and the fountains of waters.
See, this is what we're hoping for. This is part of our hope. Not only that we're members of the elect, with fruits meet for repentance, like John the Baptist said, but from our low estate, because we've been brought low, even though we have this knowledge, we have this truth. Remember what is said in Revelation. I know thy works in tribulation and poverty, but thou art rich. Why are we rich? Because we're rich in faith. We have this knowledge. So our hope is at our last end, we're going to be increased. Okay? And if you ask me, the greatest riches right now is to be delivered by Yahushua, is to get that new body that the Apostle Paul spoke about in 1 Corinthians 15th chapter, to get that, get that new body where we'll never be sick, we'll be immortals, like it said in 1 Corinthians 15, to be delivered from the coming destruction, and to be a part of Yahushua's cabinet in the next kingdom. Okay, those are the real riches right now. That's what we want to get. Because if you get that, you got everything. I mean, you got everything. Okay, so our sights are set a lot higher than this present world. All right, as it is written, the fashion of this world shall pass away. We are individuals of vision, and the scripture said, where an individual lacks vision, he perishes. Okay, so we can see the future. All right, and we hope that we're going to be part of it, beginning with the elect.
All right. Shalom. First and foremost, I would like to give all praise and glory unto Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shah, Bahashem, Makakwadash, and double honors unto the apostles and the elders of GMS who rule well, teach well, being great examples to his younger brothers, and peace and blessings and salutation to the hopeful elect out there pushing his word and truth and in sincerity across the four winds in the name of Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shah, Bahashem, Makakwadash, pushing to get up out of here. Shalom to the hopeful elect, the believers, the listeners who have came back to the obedience of the scriptures through faith in Yahweh Bashim Al-Shai. All right. So what we want to get into this morning, all right, this morning news and prophecy, is going into the will of our power is playing out. Okay. The Heavenly Father, all right, and his agenda in the earth, which is explained through prophecy, which is why he raised the prophets up in these last days, and has endowed them with the Holy Spirit, to be able to be watchmen for the house of Israel, for the remnant in these last days. All right. So we can fully understand where we at within the will of Yahweh Bashim Al-Shai. When we go into prophecy, we're going into the will of the Most High through his son Yahweh Shai, and we have this Holy Spirit. As scripture say, you have an unction from the Holy One, and all things. What's that? That 1 John 2:20. If a brother can post that, as well. We'll get that. We'll get a few more precepts. And then just got a few videos to show how, prophecy is speaking. Everything is coming together exactly how the Lord said it would happen, man. And these things should be faith boosters. Our faith should be off the charts in these times, man. The times that we coming into, our faith should be off the charts as we're seeing our power work real time in the earth, man. It's like every day you never know what you're going to see as pertaining to prophecy being fulfilled, man. If a brother can get that too, Luke 10 and I think 22 and 23, Bob Bashar. And I get this by the brother. All right, the brother posted this. Let's go here. Just the brother. Romans 8:31 is the brother you call Hope for 144. It says, "What shall we then say to these things? If the Most High be for us, who can be against us, man?" And the elect can't lose. That's a lesson within itself. All right, the elect cannot lose, man. If we was predestined before the foundation of the earth, there's no way we can lose. There's no scenario where the elect loses, man, even in death. Because we're promised, we die in Yahweh Shai, that we're going to be resurrected, man. So the elect cannot lose, man. And the Lord is showing us a good chance we could be the elect. Our chances get greater every day, man. Every day that the Lord keep us in his truth, every day the Lord has us not offended, every day that the Lord is giving us the privilege to serve, man. You brothers that's on the front line, man, you sisters that's sincere, and walking in your obedience, learning humility, man. That's another day, closer to being the elect, man, because somebody got to be the elect, man. So let's go from there. See, brother posted. All right. It might be 23, bro. Yeah, it might be 23, Salaki. You know, Luke 10 and 23. I think that's 23 and 24. You know, Salaki on my end. Well, let's get this. Is brother Yashima, tribe of Judah. 1 John 2 and 20 says, "But you have an unction from the Holy One, and you know all things, and we know all things concerning, all right, to the truth, man, to prophecy." The portion that Yahweh Bashim Shai gave us to understand, well, we know it 100%. And as things play out, we're starting to see things more clearly, man. Prophecy is starting to be shown more clearly, man. You know, certain things had a fuzzy picture. You know, we knew that the nation would be against nation, you know, war, all right, rumors of war, all right. We understood these things were going to happen, but now we're starting to see it more clear. You know, a prophecy is becoming HD, you know, high definition, you know. Let me write these titles down, man. You know, I got a hit and miss memory, all right, prophecy in HD. Okay. You know, so I got a hit and miss memory. You know, it's either excellent or trash. You know, but I forgot the title I said earlier. If a brother can remember, you know, put it in the comment. But yeah, we have an unction from the Holy One, from Yahweh Bashim Shai, you know, and we know, you know, all things. You see, so as we see prophecy happening, things are becoming more clear, man. It went from a fuzzy, you know, you see screen, okay, to now things are in HD. We're starting to see all the details, you know, of prophecy unfold, you know, and that's why I say I like to go into the details, not to just have random information, but to see, you know, because you can see the Lord at work in the details, man, you know. So when you go, let's go here. Yep, this brother got it, Luke 10 and 23, the brother Yashima, tribe of Judah, and it says that he turned him unto his disciples, this Yahweh Shai, and said privately, "Blessed are the eyes which see the things that ye see." You know, so our eyes are blessed, man, to be here real time to see Yahweh Bashim Shai close out, all right, the rulership of the heathen, you know. To see the Lord close out the rulership of the heathen. Esau, Edom is the last heathen that will ever have power on the earth, man, before it's transferred to the nation of Israel, beginning with the elect, with Yahweh Shai at the forefront, man. You know, so we in the time of the last heathen, man. Okay, it's another lesson, man. You know, we in the time of the last heathen. All right, and Esau, Edom, you know, he will be the last heathen that will have power, and he would, you know, cause these nations to go to war, you know, in an attempt to, you know, to do a global reset. But the war, all right, will begin to backfire on them. And how we know the war is backfiring on them? Because everything is lining up with prophecy, man. And it's less about what this nigga got going on and more about prophecy, man. You see what's happening according to prophecy, man. You see, you know, and we're going to get these things and show that, like, nah, man, it's prophecy that we're seeing. Okay, the elites, they had to try to squeeze their agenda within prophecy, man. They had to try to pull off this new world order within prophecy, man. They're not on the outside, all right, countering prophecy. No, they have to try to fulfill their new world order within prophecy, man. Okay, all right. So let's go from there. Let's see. Yeah, brother. Hey, you know I'm putting them out there. Hey, you know what I'm saying? If you catch it out the rim, brother, you know, do your thing, brother. So it's gonna be great. You know, brother Bayan, Yashala. You know, any title I throw out there, hey, just pile on top of it. I know I would. You know, I know I'd be biting. You see, I be biting from all brothers. You know, I'm a bite. You know what I'm saying? But so yeah, let's go here to the book of Daniel. All right, because the Bible is a book about empires and dynasties, rulerships. Okay, and it's the Lord that's orchestrating every rulership. All right, and every empire that we see that comes to power and that falls, man. Okay, so this is Daniel chapter 4 and verse 7. All right. Nah, brother. Hey, we all on the front line, brother. We on the front line. We can shoot. Hey, in the spirit, we can shoot at the same target, brother. You know, overkill that thing. This Daniel 4 and 17. It said, "This matter is by the decree of the watchers, and the demand by the word of the Holy One, to the intent that the living may know that the Most High ruleth in the kingdom of men, and he giveth it to whomsoever he will, and setteth up over it the bases of men." Okay, so and this is one thing that the prophets is coming with the message of: our power controls the earth, man. You know, because most people think Esau is the end all be all when it comes to power in the earth, man. You know, because Esau, he has influence in a lot of things. You know, a lot of things we see are staged. You know, a lot of people we see, you know, as leaders are plants and different things. But ultimately, he's not the end of authority, man. Okay, Esau has a cutoff where his authority stops. Okay, and then it's all Yahweh by Shem Al Shai. And this is what we're telling the world: like, look, Esau Edom has been placed in power, just as the elites place these leaders and prime ministers and people in position, and you know, artists and movies and, you know, actors and whatever. As he placed these people, you know, in positions, well, the Most High has placed this nigga in position, man. Okay, so this man has a limit to where his authority stops, and it's all Yahweh by Shem Al Shai, man. And this nigga has no say so. He just got to deal with it, man. And we seeing now certain prophecy that's happening, and this nigga having to deal with it. Nigga had to pivot. This nigga backpedaling in certain areas, man. All this goddamn pump faking this nigga doing, man. You know, but he loves to try to throw out like he just in full control and he got every. Nah, man, this nigga is scrambling, man. Okay, in the spirit, man, we see this nigga scrambling, man, and his word got him on the back foot. Okay, and the Lord has given rulership to the bases of the men. Okay, and we're seeing Esau turn back to the base man that he really is, man. The Lord has propped this man up, man. You know, Esau like an artist that has a dope producer, a dope ghostwriter, you know, dope marketing, you know, but the machine behind him, you know, like these rappers just got the machine behind them. That's why they can just go snatch a nigga from anywhere and make this nigga a star. You know, they just go get a ratchet nigga woman, you know, just, you know, a nigga woman at the gas station, okay, and just make ass a star because they put the machine behind it, man. Okay, you know, I say the producers, the writers, you know, the visuals, the marketing, and you know, so the Lord and the Spirit put a machine behind Esau, put this nigga in power, man. But we see the Lord beginning to script that machine away from this nigga, man, and he's turning back into that base man that he is, man. Okay, right before our eyes, man. You know, and he got one last hoorah, and that's the attempt at this new world order. All right, which he's gonna miss the whole goal, man. Okay, and Yahweh Shai gonna come obliterate his ass, man. Okay, so let's go. Let's go here. Let's go to 1 Samuel chapter 2. Okay, it's the book of 1 Samuel chapter 2 and verse 6, and it said, "The Lord killeth and maketh alive. He bring it down to the grave and bring it up." Yeah. So the Lord, you know, because as we know, this is talking about life and death, you know, individual people. Okay. But then the Lord can also put an empire to death, you know, and then he can revive an empire. And right now we're living in the revival of this Greco-Roman Empire, man. Okay. The revival of the dragon, you know, ancient Rome, pagan Rome, man, has been revived in the earth. The Lord brought it out the grave during the Renaissance, man. Okay, but now he's finna put it back in the grave once and for all, man. And he's finna revive, okay, the kingdom of Israel, the house of David, the throne of David. That's what's finna be brought back to life, man. That's what's being brought back to life, man. Okay, you know, because how should I say, the kingdom starts with us, man. Okay, it said the Lord maketh poor and make it rich. He bring it low and lift it up, man. Okay, and we're about to see Esau, Edom, okay, and these heathens be brought low. Okay, in the house of David, all right, the elect, okay, in these latter days under Yahweh Shai is being lifted up, man. Okay, So we're in a major transition of power, and it's that last transition, man. And the Lord is doing His will in the earth, man. Okay, let's go to Isaiah 46. We always get it. Isaiah 46 and 9. It says, "Remember the former things of old, for I'm the Most High, and there is none else. On the Most High, there is none like me, declaring the end from the beginning and from the ancient times the things that are not yet done, saying, My counsel shall stand, and I will do all my pleasure," man. You know, and when you go into the pleasure of the Lord is to bring down all heathen rulership and establish His Son Yahweh Shai as the King of Kings and Lord of Lords, man. You know, and have His other sons, okay, as joint heirs with Yahweh Shai. The sons of God ruling the earth in righteousness forever, man. That's the Lord's pleasure, and we've been given, signs what to look for, as the Lord will begin to usher this great transition of power, man, from the heathen to Israel, man. All right, from Esau to Jacob. Okay. When you go here, this is Matthew 24:7 says, "For nation shall rise against nation, and kingdom against kingdom, and there shall be famines and pestilence and earthquakes in diverse places. All these are the beginning of sorrows," man. You see, this is the beginning of the end of Esau, man. Okay, Esau, Edom, every move that he's making, it only, all right, forwards. Okay, see, Esau moves are now forward in our kingdom. The Lord God to where Esau working on our behalf now. Everything that this devil is doing, is planning, is scheming, it only works for us, man, because it's going to remove him from power. Okay, and the Lord is going to establish us in power, man. Okay, so we're in some beautiful times, man. And this devil, he's running out of cards, man. All right, and the Lord got this nigga on the back foot, man. That's why I said we should be, in good spirits, man. Okay, so let's go from there. Let's get into a few happenings. Let's get into it. So as it says, nation shall be against nation. Now, here it is. All right, we know what's happening is that as these alliance, this Russian, alliance, all right, of these nations that's under the banner of Russia, North Korea being one of them. All right, they're starting to put pressure on anybody that's an American ally. All right, so you have now tension between North Korea and Japan, all right, and Russia and Japan. Russia just did a drill, all right, close to, all right, the shores of Japan. Putin just went and visited, a island, off the coast of Japan. And the Japan Prime Minister was tripping. They had just tested the Tomahawk missile, Japan, which is an American missile. And when they did that, immediately Russia and North Korea put pressure on Japan. Because what Putin really went to do when he went over there to the island of Japan, he just had to check a nigga temperature, man, seeing what's good. After they tested that Tomahawk, Putin pulled up over there in the island, and he was unannounced. He didn't get he just pulled up. They're trying to see, what's good. They check, they're checking nigga temperature, trying to see, So now you got North Korea, okay, they're fired up about the situation, okay, because they know Japan is nothing but, a buffer state for America. America don't give a damn about Japan. Okay, remember they dropped the atomic bomb on them niggas, man. They don't care about Japan, but they just use Japan as a buffer, against North Korea, China, and Russia. Okay, but what we're seeing, if you are allied to America, nigga, expect maximum pressure, and this is gonna cause a lot of these nations to flip. Because they see that America can't protect their goddamn self. So ain't no way they can protect us, man. This is what Iran has exposed to the world. Because see, American power, was a lot of speculation that America could protect all its allies. That was the understood speculation of American power. That's why America had all these bases and military hardware in all these different nations. And, so it was believed that America could protect Europe, Japan, South Korea, the GCC nations. It was believed that America could protect all that. Okay, but what Iran has shown, nigga, first off, America can't protect their goddamn self. Okay, so they damn for sure can't protect y'all. Okay, so now you're starting to see a lot of movement happening. Okay, to where these nations that's with Russia is starting to put pressure on American allies all throughout the world. If you American ally, nigga, expect maximum pressure, man. Okay, because they know, oh nigga, you ain't got no protection. You see, like nigga, you unprotected. Okay, so let's play a little bit of this.
North Korea is issuing a chilling warning to Japan. Kim Yo-jong, the powerful sister of North Korean leader Kim Jong-un, has threatened Japan over its rapidly expanding military capabilities. According to reports citing North Korean state media, Kim warned that if Tokyo makes what Pyongyang calls the wrong choice by continuing its military buildup, Japan could face an immediate, annihilating attack. The warning comes after Japan has accelerated efforts to strengthen its long-range strike capabilities. North Korea has specifically condemned Japan's recent test of a US-made Tomahawk cruise missile from the Aegis destroyer Chokai. Pyongyang has also pointed to Japan's deployment of longer-range Type 12 missiles, high-speed weapons, and other systems designed to expand Tokyo's ability to strike targets at greater distances. Kim Yo-jong has accused Japan of abandoning its post-World War II pacifist posture and transforming itself into what she calls a war state. She has also blamed the United States for helping Japan develop these capabilities, arguing that Washington's military support is increasing the threat to North Korea and the wider region. Kim warned that North Korea would not remain a passive observer. She previously said Pyongyang would develop additional military options and make Japan regret what she described as its dangerous ambitions. The latest warning comes amid rising tensions between North Korea, Japan, South Korea, and the United States. North Korea has repeatedly condemned, while Tokyo says its military buildup is a defensive response to threats from North Korea, China, and Russia. Kim Yo-jong also addressed other major issues in her latest statement.
Yeah, man. So basically, Japan been posturing up, So North Korea, like, nigga, I don't know what y'all getting ready for. Nigga, all this practicing, nigga, what we practicing for? So the spirit of war is in the atmosphere, man. And it started with these goddamn small hats, man. We're gonna show how these small hats are behind all this, man, because small hats through America, okay, against Iran, okay, and what they started and what they exposed, was America's weakness, and then what it showed as well, all right, that these nations are better off, making alliances outside of America, man. Okay, so what we're seeing now is just a spirit of war that the Lord has in the air, man. So all this tension that's been brewing, under the surface for all these years, now we're seeing these nations begin to make moves and speak up on certain things, okay? Because it's nation against nation, kingdom against kingdom. That's what a world war is, man. It's a bunch of conflicts rolled in one, okay? So now you're seeing all these tensions that's been brewing under the surface for years. Now they starting to be addressed, you see? So Japan, is over there defenseless, against Russia, China, and North Korea. You know, so now you're seeing pressure being put on Japan, which is an American ally. Okay, and we're going to continue to see more and more of this, man. All right, let's go from there. Let's go from there. You know, and all these nations are going to flip on America, man, because now being an ally with America has no benefits. There was a time when being an ally with America was the best thing going. Okay, but now we're coming into a time being an ally with America just put you in the crosshairs, man. Put you in a jacked up situation, man. Okay, you know, you're defenseless. Okay, you know, your economy, because Japan relies on a lot of the oil that comes out the Strait. Okay, so Japan economy been trash lately. It's been through. You know, then you know militarily they can't do nothing, man. You know, against Russia, China, and North Korea, man. Okay, America can't defend them. Then America moved some of those THAAD systems, you know, from South Korea, and gave them to the small hats, man. Okay, that's another thing. These nations see that America's only priority is these goddamn small hats, man. You know, so all these defense agreements and pacts that America had with these nations, America can't fulfill it, man. You know, and we're seeing the empire. We're seeing a desperate empire, man, with America. Okay, now of course they want to bring hell to the American population. All right, to create desperation for them to take the sea hip. But the American empire, you know, the economy and the military that has, you know, dominated the earth is now in decline. Okay, now we're seeing desperation from the empire, man. Okay, and it's going to continue to unravel, man, because the will of the Lord is going forth, man. Okay, now let's play a little bit of this, because you remember the news with the Abraham Lincoln. You know, the sailors were complaining, and you know, the living conditions. You know, the ship, you know, the aircraft carrier pretty much turned to a you know, Rocket Island. You know, and then you know, yeah, nigga jumping off the ship. But they're saying there's even more suicides now on the U.S. aircraft carrier George Washington, which is sailing out to replace the Abraham Lincoln, the USS Abraham Lincoln, man. You know, so let's hear about a little bit of this, man. There's a number of bad news for, you know, America, man. And Bob Bashar, brother, could put Isaiah 43:13 in the NLT, Bob Bashar.
The USS Abraham Lincoln is finally heading home after an extraordinary deployment of more than 250 days at sea. But as well as the Middle East, another arrives, and Iran is blocking reports of deteriorating conditions aboard American warships. Iran's Ghana embassy posted a scathing message claiming the American dream is now at sea, while making an explosive claim about 9 suicides involving USS George Washington's crew. Iran is turning the U.S. Navy's carrier rotation into a propaganda attack. The Iranian embassy in Ghana posted a message mocking the conditions reportedly faced by American sailors. It claimed the USS Abraham Lincoln endured moldy showers, malnutrition, starvation, broken toilets, and no soap during its deployment. Then it claimed the USS George Washington's crew had suffered 9 suicides. And Iran's punchline? The American dream now at sea. The most explosive.
They said the American dream is not now at sea. You know, and see, even with the information war, the propaganda war, America is losing it. You know, because Iran talk about those aircraft carriers. They say the American dream is now at sea. Okay, which is harsh living conditions, suicide rate, and that's what's happening in America, man. Okay, suicide rates on the rise, homelessness is on the rise, food insecurity is on the rise. So they saying, well, look, now the American dream is at sea on the aircraft carrier, man. Okay, so America is losing in every way possible, man. Okay, economically, militarily, propaganda, they're losing in every aspect. Okay, because the Lord is against Babylon, man. Okay, So let's play a little bit more of this.
Part of the Iranian message is its reference to suicide. Iran claimed George Washington sailors had endured such severe conditions that 9 crew members died by suicide. That is a devastating allegation, but the broader crisis surrounding the U.S. carrier fleet has already included serious concerns about sailors' mental health. The USS Abraham Lincoln's deployment has drawn reports of declining morale, extreme fatigue, and mental health struggles after months without a normal port call. And that is what makes the Iranian propaganda especially pointed. The Lincoln spent more than 250 uninterrupted days at sea, an extraordinary stretch for an aircraft carrier. Its crew has been supporting U.S. military operations linked to the war with Iran while operating thousands of miles from home. Reports have raised concerns about food supplies, hygiene products, living conditions, and the psychological strain of such a prolonged deployment. The Navy and Pentagon have pushed back strongly against the most severe descriptions. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth has called reports about conditions aboard the Lincoln completely misrepresented. Now the USS George Washington has arrived in the Middle East to take over the Lincoln's mission. The handover means the Lincoln can finally begin its journey home after nearly 9 months of deployment. But Washington is not entering a quiet theater. The carrier is joining the USS George H.W. Bush in the region as the United States continues military operations connected to Iran. And that means the pressure on American sailors is far from over.
Nigga through. Okay? They gotta get out of there, man. Had to bring them niggas home. Nigga crying to their mama, to their wife. You see, an American man, you know, American society, you know, is producing these weak ass men. Okay, here it is. You put these sailors on this aircraft carrier, man. You know, and you take them off thousands of miles, man. These men don't have the mental strength, all right, to pull off, all right, these missions, man. Okay, they ain't got what it takes to be locked in like that, man. These are niggas that come home and be ran by their woman, but then you think they finna go over there and enforce their will on men that don't give a damn? Absolutely not, man. Okay, so let's go here. Yeah, here you go. Yep, this is the book of Isaiah 43 and 14. They call Hope for Leg 144. And going back, this is just prophecy playing out, man. Okay, them aircraft carriers are becoming irrelevant, and they used to be the staple of American military power. Is these aircraft carriers, man, to be able to pull up on your coast, all right, and just do these unlimited bomb campaigns, okay, then fire off missiles from the aircraft carrier, okay, and just devastate, you know, your country, man. Aircraft carriers, man. These aircraft carriers are having to stay so far back that they're becoming irrelevant, man. And that's why they're just sitting ducks out there, man. And then they're able to disrupt the logistics to getting supplies to those aircraft carriers, man. So those aircraft carriers are becoming irrelevant, man. You know, and that's why they have to keep going in and out of the combat zone, man. Okay, Isaiah 43 and 14. This is what the Lord says, your redeemer, because it's all about the redemption of Israel, man. Everything we see happening is the Lord preparing to redeem his people, man. Okay, like I say, the elites and they little agenda they got going on, hey, that's finna be wiped out. Okay, the Lord finna wipe all that out and redeem his people, man. Okay, damn them coward ass elites, man. Okay, it said, for your sakes I will send an army against Babylon, forcing the Babylonians to flee in those ships they are so proud of, man. Okay, so those aircraft carriers, those Navy destroyer strike teams was the pride and joy of American military power, man. You know, and that's why the American military is used to not having to do much when they go to war. Okay, but kick it on them ships and let the Air Force and those missiles from the ships do all the work, man. Okay, those Tomahawks, man. Okay, but what's being exposed now, all right, is that the American military ain't built for no dogfight, man. Okay, they don't have the mental strength, all right, to lock in with no extended war, man. Okay, when they're shocking all campaign don't work, they finish. If they don't get a first round knockout, they finish, man. And now we in the late rounds, man, and these niggas is tapping out, man. Okay, so you got people from the George Washington aircraft carrier that's on the way over there. Them niggas is already committing suicide before they get over there, man. Okay, allegedly, man. That's the reports that these niggas is already committing suicide before they go, man. Okay, that's why I say, man, these hot pocket eating Americans ain't built for what's over there, man. Okay, America, this matriarch, the spirit of Queen of Heaven and matriarch is so heavy. Okay, in America, man, these niggas, man, these suburban Americans ain't ready for that over there, man. Okay, these niggas is used to college football on Saturday, bars, kicking it, frat parties, and they not built for that over there, man. And it only get worse, man. The Lord gonna continue to turn up the knob on them niggas, man. So let's go from there. Let's get some more. Okay, because let's see. Yeah, let's go here. Dealing with NATO. All right, because as Russia, okay, is constantly gaining territory in Ukraine, Europe's biggest fear is that Russia invade Europe, and they know America can't protect Europe. Remember, there was a big speculation that America could protect all these different allies, okay, but now they're seeing they can't. So now the strategy is changing amongst these nations. Like, look, America not the option. America not the best option anymore. For the longest time, alliance with America was the best option for these nations, man. But now they see this is not the best option, man. Okay? Even economically, man, dealing with Europe, it makes much more sense because Europe depends on a lot of their oil that comes from the Strait of Hormuz. Okay? And America doesn't have the oil to replace, all right, all that oil that comes from the Strait of Hormuz. And then it's so costly for the Europe to buy American oil, man. Okay, when they got Russia right there, and Russia, like, because Ukraine destroyed the pipeline that goes from Russia that was running through Russia, through Poland, going into Europe, man. America blew up the Nord Stream pipeline. Okay, because these nations be having energy wars, man. Okay, going into this new world order, because this new world order is energy intense, man. And who controls the energy controls the system. You see? So you have these energy wars that's been going on for a while. Okay. So America made it real hard on Europe. Like, America's been making it real hard on Europe, man. Okay. I'm talking about real hard economically, militarily. They made it hard on Europe, man. Okay. And now what we're seeing, the Lord is setting it up to where Europe's best option, these EU nations' best option, is just to side with Russia, man. Nigga, let's just side with Russia. In their mind, they're like, we just get a pipeline built from Russia that's gonna be cheap, that's gonna be cheaper energy, okay? And then we allies with Russia. We don't need America to protect us from Russia, okay? That's the thinking that the Lord got these nations on to fulfill prophecy, man. Okay, it's just gonna make a lot of sense for you. Like, nigga, we ally with Russia. We don't need America to protect us from Russia, because NATO was created to protect an invasion of Russia into Europe. Okay, but if you're allied with Russia, it means you're going to get cheaper energy, which is going to be better for your economy, and you don't need American protection to protect you from Russia because you're allies now. Okay, so America is being written out the script, man, and it's going to make perfect sense to the nation. Look, let's just nuke this bitch, man. Okay. That's what it's going to boil down to. So let's play this.
Not sticking together. I think that NATO made a terrible mistake, but I think a tremendous mistake was when NATO just wasn't, they just weren't there. And we would have always been there for them, but now based on their actions, I guess we don't have to be, do we?
Mr. President,
That sounds like a breaking story, yes, sir? Is that breaking it? Not sticking together. I think that NATO made a terrible mistake when they wouldn't send a small amount of military armament, when they wouldn't send, just even acknowledge what we were doing for the world and taking on Iran. I never considered it very risky, but war is always risk. A lot of strange things happen in war that are very bad, but I didn't consider it. I know how great we're the greatest military by far. Anywhere there was nobody close. I didn't think there was a big risk, but there's always surprises with war. They can be very bad surprises. I mean, wars are lost that should be won. Many wars are lost. You think a country is going to wipe somebody out and they end up getting wiped out themselves. So it's always.
So he said two main things, talking about with the NATO alliance and how it don't stick. Okay, we're going to get that in prophecy. And then he said, we expected to wipe them out, but sometimes you end up getting wiped out yourself, man. This prophecy, man, the Lord got these devils speaking these things, man. Okay, because this nigga just up here talking, man. You see, was this a spirit on this nigga to say particular things because he don't know shit about war. That's why he can speak only in such vague terms. You think you're gonna wipe somebody out, and then you end up getting wiped out. Okay, nigga said it. Okay, so the Lord, got prophecy and heavy effect, man. These Edomites are done. Look at these Edomites, man. Look at these niggas, man. These are the niggas that run the world. I'm talking about immortality, technocracy, man. Nigga, get out of here, man. Okay, this nigga one, you see, this nigga one wrong move away from breaking every goddamn thing in his body, man. Fragile as hell, man. Okay, talking about running the earth forever through technocracy, man.
Risky, but I think a tremendous mistake was when NATO just wasn't there. They just weren't there. It's going to make a lot of money for the United States because we spend hundreds of billions of dollars a year on NATO, hundreds of protecting them. And we would have always been there for them. But now, based on their actions, I guess we don't have to be, do we?
Mr. President,
That sounds like a breaking story, yes, sir. Is that breaking news?
Yeah, it is breaking news. It's prophecy. Okay, so he mentioned about them not sticking together. Okay, so let's get a couple of these things in prophecy. All right, first let's go here to let's go to Daniel chapter 2. Okay, it's the book of Daniel. Yeah, it's in Daniel 2. All right, it's the book of Daniel chapter 2 and verse Yep. So now, because right now we're in the 10 toes of the statue that, that Daniel interpreted this dream for Nebuchadnezzar. Okay. So when Daniel interprets his dream, he gets down to the toes. Well, this is speaking of America, NATO, and EU. All right. These 10 toes represent those vassals. Okay. Of the Roman Empire. Okay, and Rome has been revived, so those vassals, those 10 toes of the day, okay, would be these EU nations. Okay, and then the NATO is their military, alliance between America and the EU. Okay, to have a standing, military force in their region, ready to project power, when need be. Okay, but what you're seeing now is what NATO done stood down. Okay, these EU nations, they done stood down. Okay, and a lot of when you go, like we went into it the other day with that woman, that was ex-CIA. She just left the CIA in May, and she spoke about how America was making these moves and not telling nobody. They don't tell their allies, they don't tell nobody, just making these moves, and then they allies like, goddamn, and then y'all want us to jump into this? They're like, nah, we're gonna fall back, man. So when you go to Daniel 2 and 41, it says, whereas thou sawest the feet and toes part of potter's clay and part of iron, the kingdom shall be divided, but there shall be in the strength of iron, for as much as thou sawest the iron mixed with iron clay. And the strength of this NATO, this American EU and NATO alliance was the American military, man. Okay, and as they see, all right, the strength. All right, their strength being dominated in this war, it's like, well, nigga, we don't stand a chance because and then it's not so much that the EU just not willing to help. It ain't much them niggas can do. Okay, the EU don't have no hell of a military, man. None of these EU nations really. Okay, they were just riding the American wave, Babylon the Great, man. They used to assist America in this, its military campaigns, in Western Asia, what they call the Middle East. Okay, but of itself, Britain can't get up and go do nothing. France military can't get up and go do a goddamn thing. They could assist America. That's why I said they partly iron, partly clay, miry clay, man. Which is fragile. Okay, Germany, Greece, Cyprus, them niggas can't. Italy. You see the Netherlands, Denmark, them niggas can't do nothing military, man. Okay, so it ain't even the fact that they're just not willing to help just cause they feel some type of way. It really ain't nothing them niggas can do, man, but shoot nukes on America. You see, that's the only thing that makes sense is for them to shoot nukes on America, man, because that's the EU nations that are nuclear capable. Okay, so it says verse 42 says, and the toes of the feet were part of iron and part of clay, so the kingdom shall be partly strong and partly broken. And this is what we see. And the partly strong is America, and America getting all right jacked up, man. Okay, yeah, they see America getting belt to ass, so it's like, damn, them niggas can't come rescue America, man. They don't have it. They ain't got it in them. You see, it ain't nothing else. Okay, so the only thing that makes sense is for them to join with Europe, with Russia. Okay, it says and China, because it makes sense economically and militarily. All right, for them to join the ranks of Russia and China. All right, and cross America out the map, which that's all prophecy, man. It says, and whereas thou sawest iron mixed with miry clay, they shall mingle themselves with the seed of men, but they shall not cleave one to another, even as iron is not mixed with clay. And it began with these devils, colonizing the earth, these Europeans, and then in the latter days, all these different pacts and agreements they have with these nations. Okay, but these nations are saying, like, wait a minute, nigga, y'all can't fulfill y'all end of the deal. Y'all can't protect us, man. Y'all can't even protect our economy. You see, y'all can't even protect, the economy, man. Y'all, what's the point? Okay. And what is it leading to? All right. Verse 44. And in the days of these kings shall the power of heaven set up a kingdom. And see, where the kingdom is being set up. Well, how should I say the kingdom of heaven is within you. So the prophets being raised up, teaching his word, edifying the elect. That's the beginning of the Lord setting up a kingdom as this kingdom is falling, man. Okay, which shall never be destroyed, and the kingdom shall not be left to other people, other nations. All right, which means our kingdom will never be translated to another people. Okay, Israel is going to be an everlasting world, an everlasting age. It said, but it shall break in pieces and consume all these kingdoms, and it shall stand forever. Okay, so Yahushua is coming to consume all the kingdoms of the earth, man. Even these new alliances that these nations are making with Russia, well, that's going to be consumed at the return of Yahushua, man. All right, it's going to be a short-lived alliance because they're just allies to fulfill prophecy, man. Okay, matter of fact, I know brothers got that. Yep. Yeah, let me get this. Let me queue up another. Got a couple more. Let's queue this up. Yep. So let's read. This is the brother Yashima tribe of Judah. Revelation 17:17. For the Most High have put it in their hearts to fulfill his will and to agree and give their kingdom unto the beasts, until the words of the Most High should be fulfilled. So these nations agreed, to give over their, the control, because the global economy was controlled by what? America. All right, which is the elites, using, America, all right, like a storefront, to the global economy. You see, because it's the elite system All right, that runs America economy, which runs the world. You see this petrodollar system. This is what dominated the global economy. And then the EU nations gave their security obligation to America as well. That's why they haven't been investing a lot into the military, because it's like shit, they all invested into America and NATO. Okay. But even NATO, is fragile. You see, and most of the money was going into America, man. It was like, okay, America just gonna protect everything. We just gonna ball on the economy. Let America protect. Let America handle the military aspect. Okay, so it made these nations vulnerable, man. Okay, but they did that to fulfill the will of the Lord. So now these EU nations are in a position to where the only thing that makes sense, right, is to shoot nukes on America, man. And that's why we read verse 17, and the 10 horns which thou sawest upon the beast, these shall hate the whore, and shall make her desolate and naked, and shall eat her flesh and burn her with fire, man. And that's nuclear destruction, man. Okay, so all these nuclear capable EU nations are going to launch their missiles on America, man. Okay, the Lord has it to where these nations are writing America out the script. Okay, America is becoming the source of all the strife amongst these nations, man. And they like, look, we gonna go into this new world order without this nigga, man. Okay, we gonna do our own thing. You see, and that's what we see happening. All right, and it's all according to prophecy. Now, let's play this, because remember, Ezekiel 38, the three powerhouse nations in Ezekiel 38 is Russia, which is Magog, all right, Iran, which is Persia, and Turkey, which is Gomor. Okay, now we see, all right, that Iran and Russia are already click tight. They're pretty much, side by side on in two different fronts. In Russia with Ukraine, and Iran with America. Okay, which the small heads are using America and Ukraine like a proxy. Okay, so now these small heads have gotten Russia. They drag Russia into a war. They drag America and Iran into a war. Now their thing is to drag Turkey into a war. Okay, which is going to complete the last nation of Ezekiel 38. So this is great news, man. This is beautiful, man. Okay, what the Lord is doing. You see, we're seeing our power at work real time. We're seeing our power get busy in the earth, man. And He's getting ready to redeem His people. So all these things are beginning to happen, real time. All right, so let's play this. All right.
It means short term. I just think long term, it's another indicator that you're going to see a collision between the Turks and the Israelis. And as I say, it's a very bad idea, because in the meantime, you've had this new alignment: Saudi Arabia, Pakistan, Turkey.
If you're running your own business, you need Symphony.
And everybody has said, well, what's it really about? Well, contrary to popular belief, it's not about attacking Iran. I'm sorry, it is not an anti-Iranian alliance. It has a great deal to do with putting an end, ultimately, at some point in time, to the Greater Israel Project. They're not going to allow that to succeed. So under the circumstances, you would say the prudent thing for the Israelis at this point is to find a way to avoid any unnecessary collision with Turkey until certainly this issue with Iran is settled. Well, they've chosen not to do that because, well, they're arrogant, and they're also completely confident that they have control of us. And they seem to think that in addition to fighting the Iranians, that we could be dragged into a conflict with the Turks as well. And of course, they've also built an alliance system in a sense, because they're closely aligned with the Greeks and with Cyprus against the Turks. And they hope that our Mediterranean fleet and whatever forces we have could be employed in that endeavor. Ultimately, everything's shaping up brilliantly for a much larger regional war, something no one expected.
But we expect, okay, we expected this through what? Prophecy, man. This is our faith. We're seeing our faith, play out. Okay. You see, we're seeing our faith play out real time, man. We expected this war to go regional and then eventually go global. Okay, so what the small heads did, um, they struck an air base in northern Syria. Now, this air base, all right, was a Turkey. Okay, it was Turkey getting ready to establish military presence in northern Syria. Okay, and they was getting ready to build up, military in northern Syria. They had sent personnel, okay, to this air base. All right, and what the small heads did, they went and did an airstrike on their air base. Pretty much telling Turkey, little nigga, y'all can't build here. Y'all can't have a military presence in Syria. Okay, this is going to draw Turkey into this thing, man. Okay, so what the small heads just did was just knock down the first domino for Turkey to get involved militarily, man. Okay, and who are they going to join ranks with, man? Okay, according to Ezekiel 38, Russia and Iran, man, and then and small heads are through, and the small heads are starting all this, and they think they're gonna fall back and watch everybody else fight, and then they just gonna merge at the end as the last, government, they're gonna merge as the government is gonna rule the earth going forward. Nah, man. All right. These nations gonna get on these small heads' ass, man, according to Ezekiel 38. All right, Zephaniah 2 and 4. Okay, they gonna get on these small heads' ass, man. Okay, so it's gonna go. Everything that these devils are doing is gonna backfire and go bad for them. And you gotta remember, the least of these Edomites that survived this war are going into captivity, man. Okay, that New World Order, that shit does. Hey, this is a bad idea. All right, it just became worse. Okay, now they still want to be able to wreak a lot of havoc as far as civil unrest. Okay, the Lord is still going to use them to judge and cause a lot of death, in an attempt to set up this new world order. When you look at it from another view, man, hey, it's going to be everything Esau doing from here on out is going to be short-lived. Okay, there's no more decades and generations. No, everything is going to be short-lived. It's going to be quick. Okay, and Yahweh Shai is going to come. Okay, and judge in righteousness, man. You see? So let's play a little more.
Well, that's what Tom Barak said anyway. I forgot to say. So Tom Barak told I-24 that Israel's strikes on Syria's Abu al-Dur airbase carried a real risk of triggering a direct military confrontation with Turkey and Syria. Barak said Turkish forces were not warned about the Israeli aircraft or their objective and could have scrambled fighters believing Turkey was under attack. Quote, yesterday's events were serious and worrying. Washington is now holding quiet talks on establishing a permanent deconfliction mechanism between Israel and Syria, potentially involving Turkey, with a 24-hour coordination center to prevent future misunderstandings. Now, you've made the very important point that Erdogan does a lot of business with Israel, despite the rhetoric, and especially the oil coming out of Azerbaijan and the agricultural product coming out of Turkey. But why war? Why? What is Turkey's benefit with this war? What is Israel's benefit? They don't share a border. They're very far from one another. Is it just expanding influence in the region? And as they fill that vacuum left by the US, starting with Syria, that could lead to a clash?
Well, I think from the Turkish standpoint, privately, they regard Syria as Turkish province. They also regard most of northern Iraq as a Turkish province. Turkish generals have made it very clear to American generals for many, many years in Iraq during the occupation that as far as they were concerned, places like Erbil were Turkish cities. And remember that the northern oil fields that we regard as part of Iraq were historically part of Turkey. And the Turks were very angry after World War I that all of that was taken from them. So I think the Turks have a different view of the region from what you're suggesting. And they think that the Israelis are encroaching on them. And the Israelis have threatened openly to take Damascus. And certainly I'm not sure there's much to stop them from doing so. But remember that when the Turkish foreign minister arrived for his first meeting in Damascus with the new ISIS graduates.
And what's that in Isaiah? The prophecy how Damascus shall be in ruins. And see, we'll have to understand that Turkey is the residue of the Ottoman Empire. which was a vast, empire, in that region of the earth. Now, World War One, all right, it vastly reduced, the Ottoman Empire. It ended the Ottoman Empire because one thing the elites wanted to do was to end all monarchs. Okay, that's why World War One, was heavily aimed at diminishing the power of the Russian Tsar Nicholas II. Okay, and the Ottoman Empire. Okay, so World War One, you will see the Ottoman Empire be reduced, to what we know today now as Turkey. Okay, and the Ottoman Empire, they had full control of what they call Palestine, the land where these small hats said today. That was once a part of the Ottoman Empire. Certain parts of Syria. All right, but after World War One, you had what you call Sykes-Picot. I believe I did a lesson on it before, but probably worth revisiting. On how these Edomites, the British, carved up what they call the Middle East, amongst themselves. Okay, you had Sykes-Picot Agreement. You can look into it. Ultimately, some pretty good documentaries on it. That I got on the watch list. But yeah, so these Edomites, the British carved up Sykes-Picot. And that's why the British Parliament was able, to write a letter to the Rothschilds to give, the Rothschilds with the land of Palestine, which they took in World War One. Okay, so you had the Balfour Declaration, which was a letter sent to, one of the Rothschilds, by a British Parliament member. His last name was Balfour, and he was promising that land of Palestine to the small hats that they just took from the Ottoman Empire, which, remember, the Ottoman Empire, the Turks. So all these things are connected. When you look at this thing, man, it's just been a long narrative of feuding and scuffling and, land grabbing and power grabbing and resource grabbing. These nations been at this for a while, and everything just coming to a head for the sake of prophecy, man. And it just set up for Yahweh Shah to come in all, the fuss and set up a righteous kingdom, ultimately, man. Sum everything up. Okay, but now the Turks are being activated. All right, and this is all prophecy. You see, so they play a little more.
That have taken over the country. He first went to a mosque where a Turkish sultan is interred. I've forgotten the name of the sultan. This has been a few years ago. And that was a huge signal to everybody in the region who knows anything about the Turks and the history of the region, that the Turks were back. That was not an accidental visit. That was a signal to the Israelis that the Turks will not tolerate the capture of Damascus. So I think this whole business is far more serious now. They have this new alignment with Saudi Arabia. Can Saudi Arabia compensate for what? Well, perhaps. Certainly the Saudis have oil and cash. The Turks and the Pakistanis need both. So I'm sure that's part of the consideration. But at some point, you reach a decision where all of these other rational calculuses don't matter anymore. If anyone was rational in 1914, Germany and Russia would never have gone to war.
We've already sold over 2.9 million barrels, creating steady jobs for hardworking folks chasing the American.
All right, so let's go from there. And that's in that's the one right here. The brother got. Okay, so this is the brother. According to Wild GMS, pray, always hopeful, elect. Isaiah 17:1, it said, the burden of Damascus, behold, Damascus is taken away from being a city, and it shall be a ruinous heat, because it's finna get hot in that region, and that's the close to the region of the Valley of Jehoshaphat, Yahweh Shaphat, that's in the region of northwest Syria. Okay, Damascus in that region. All right, so the Lord is starting to intensify, these certain areas of war, All right. And it's all been activated by prophecy, man. Okay. You know, you go into the region of Jehoshaphat. And I'm gonna show y'all real quick. The brother just sent me he sent it to me this morning, the beloved brother Elder Shaquat from down here, GMS, Mississippi. So let's play and let's go to a visual of what's happening between these small hats and Turkey right now. So let's play this. You know, this kind of visual explaining what's happening, what he was just talking about.
Happened. Israel has made an indirect move against Turkey. In other words, it has issued a warning that a war between Israel and Turkey could break out at any moment. What happened is that yesterday Israel bombed the Abu al-Duhur airbase located in Syria. This airbase is just 45 miles from Turkey. Israel dropped around 8 bombs on the runways and hangars of this very airbase. According to Axios, Israel gave the US an explanation that the main reason for bombing this airbase was Turkey, and that this attack was carried out specifically to prevent a Turkish military buildup inside Syria. Syria's foreign minister Asad al-Shaibani told Axios that he had clearly told Israel there was no intention of establishing any permanent Turkish military presence, but Israel bombed anyway. Turkey has also rejected Israel's claim, saying there was no Turkish presence at that airbase at all. It seems Israel has now started considering Turkey as its biggest enemy these days. Many Israeli ministers have even declared Turkey a bigger threat than Iran. Meanwhile, the US considers both Turkey and Syria to be close allies, but Israel will always remain its first priority. And as Israel and Turkey keep threatening each other, it looks like a new front is about to open up in the Middle East.
And it's all prophecy, man. And it's all prophecy speaking. Okay. So let's I had another video, but I just added to another news and prophecy of Aratazah, you know. But let's go here to the book of Revelation, chapter 11. Because this is what everything boils down to. Okay. Everything boils down to the return of Yahushua, man. Okay. And all this war, all this turmoil, you know, all these different fronts and conflicts and nation against nation and kingdom against kingdom is just ushering in Yahushua, man. Everything is ushering in Yahushua, which is our victory, man. You know? So like you say, bro, when you look at the scoreboard of prophecy, we up. Everything is falling right into place, man. You know, we the only one scoring points right now. Okay. Revelation 11:14 said the second woe was past, and behold, the third woe coming quickly, man. So we're watching this third world war come quickly. You know, we're watching nothing but moves being made, okay, to escalate this third war. So now I say the ball in Esau court to come on, roll out this new world order, man. This chip, man. You know, make this thing mandatory, bring the crisis, you know, famine of the word, the persecution of the prophets, man. You know, Esau got to make his move, man. You know, the pressure on Esau, man. All right, pressure on him to go ahead and go with his move, man. Okay, with this new world order. So when crisis happened in America and you know, Jacob's trouble, you know, like I said, the civil unrest, and the devil gets to a point to where he, you know, unveils his chip, okay, his RFID chip as the fix all to the chaos, man. Okay, this war is going to go haywire. Okay, because remember the war is going to still be going on while all this is happening, man. Okay, because you go into World War II, they had the Bretton Woods Agreement, you know, a year before World War II ended, you know, which made America the American dollar, the federal, a world reserve currency, man. Okay, so they can mandate this thing as the war is still going. Okay, Revelation 11:15 says, and 7 angels sounded, and there was great voices in heaven saying, the kingdoms of this world are become the kingdoms of our Lord, and of his anointing he shall reign forever and ever, man. Okay, and all power in the earth is going to be transferred to Yahushua. Okay, this is where we at in prophecy, where all power, okay, and authority in the earth is getting ready to be transferred to Yahushua in a moment. You know, so yeah, we'll leave it right there. You know, we'll you know, you brothers, all right. And You few sisters edified once again. Want to give all praise and glory unto Yahweh Bahashem, Yahweh Shah Bahashem, Rakakadash, and double honors unto the apostles and the elders GMS who rule well, teach well, being great examples towards young brothers, and peace and blessing salutation to the whole elect. Shalom.